Would you please confirm that you're able to hear me clearly? Okay, Gopi is saying yes. All right. Okay. So greetings to you all and welcome to Novus Education IELTS webinar. And thank you for confirming that my voice is clear and audible to each one of you. So in fact, I wanted Harita to kind of just walk us through the overall program in the next 1 hour, what we are aiming through this IELTS initiative through Novus Education. And I'm glad that you all had taken time and you were able to join in this webinar. So this webinar is designed to provide an overview of the IELTS program. And we would like to thank each one of you once again for having taken your time, your valuable time, and also want you to inform at the right of this call in the beginning that please keep yourself on silent mode so that, you know, in case we have any background noise coming and we do not have any distractions further as we go into the session. And also, if you have any questions, key questions, we will surely address those in the end of the session. So thank you very much, and let me introduce myself. And on behalf of Novus Education Institute, we would like to thank each one of you for making this happen. And I'm partnering with Novus Education team as IELTS certified trainer from British Council. Before that, going a little more about myself, we have Director Ram Enaganti, who is the leader of Novus Education, and he has a wider experience in various industry, both in IT and other sectors, where he has been a pioneer role in ensuring that Novus Education progress and aim for success in all sort of education panels, including IELTS. And we also would like to thank Harita, who is the Business Development Manager, and she is the core member of this team who's actually driving this initiative together with me and Ravi. And also we have Dilip and other team. I'm not sure if they have joined already there. So let me also introduce myself. So I'm Kezia Hitesh. I have about 12 to 13 years of experience, and I mainly come from a HR background. I worked in IT, manufacturing sector, in finance industry, in various industries, starting from business management consulting also. And I had the opportunity to also travel abroad. So I've been to many countries and also very delighted to kind of facilitate leadership training programs for various students at all levels, right from team leaders to operators to cell assistants to managers to senior managers, and also to HR panels and groups. As part of my experience, I was kind of excited when I was starting my own firm abroad. I also wanted to look at IELTS, and I wanted to explore IELTS as one of the opportunity to see that why IELTS is becoming so much wanted in the market, and why is everybody looking for IELTS program. With that thought in mind, I had taken the initiative to go back and to see if I can be a certified IELTS trainer, so that I can be a role model in the society and communities who are looking for IELTS training certificate. And which is why, you know, I had an opportunity to talk with Novus Education team, and they had, drawn this initiative to come over and also as part of their business to also drive IELTS training program. So what we are going to do today in the next couple of minutes, that we are going to present you an overview of IELTS. But before that, as I already mentioned, a few lines about Novus Education. The main ideology of the overall business here has been begun in the year 2015, mainly to serve in the education sector. And we have also heard many testimonies through how students are motivated through IELTS education, and in the way they run systematic and disciplined programs, which are not just embedded through other affiliations, but it's more or less to kind of look at how students are progressing step by step and how they are enhancing their competency level irrespective of whatever program they choose under the umbrella of Novus Education. And of course, the credit always goes to the team core members and directors who have put a lot of work into this in bringing Novus education together. Okay. So what is the main purpose of Novus education on IELTS program? The main purpose of our Novus Education IELTS program is mainly to support all the individuals who are looking for IELTS, and we would like to coach them step by step in an effective and efficient manner so that they can take test practices based on whether it is going to be for self-development, or if they're going on a work visa or PR or immigration, and of course how to move up the ladder if they are going into a global mobility program. So that has been the main purpose and this big idea for us to kind of put this initiative on IELTS training. So I have a couple of questions for all of you who are on the line with me now. And the questions are, let me just move icon that is reappearing on my screen all the time. Okay. How to improve students' IELTS score? Is it a good idea to read the questions first in the reading test? Is it important for me as a student to correct spellings in the listening test? If you, as a student, think so also in terms of writing tests, is it important that I, as a student, should write as much as possible? So what do you think based on these 4 questions? You can give me your views on chat, and we can skim and summarize accordingly as we proceed in the session. So I'll give you about 1 minute to kind of take a look at these questions and quickly at the same time respond. That is reading test, listening test, or writing test would require these expectations, yes or no? If you disagree, maybe you can just put a 1-line statement there, why you disagree and what do you think about it. You can take any of the categories there, whether it's reading, listening, or writing, and give your view at the same time. So I'll give you about a minute to kind of give your thoughts and share your comments on chat. All right, so Gopi is saying that yes, reading the questions first is important. All right. How about fourth one? If you think that writing as much as possible in writing test will increase my band score, do you agree or disagree with that? No, I won't agree. Oh, okay, Gopi is very active. Fantastic. Okay. So thank you, Gopi, for being, taking the lead in answering those questions. And I'm sure others also have some thoughts running in their head. So as we move into the next slide, so what we are going to present here today is we're going to look at not everything that we have in the IELTS program. Of course, there are a lot of do's and don'ts, end-to-end structure and discipline and systematic approach when you look at IELTS training program. But today we are not here aiming to cover everything and to allow in this session to be familiar with end-to-end of the program, but we will look at the key highlights and how Novus Education is training students and how they are being a differentiating factor in ensuring that students score more than 7 band. So we look at some of the key things. One is how to improve IELTS score and your approach to IELTS learning, and also how do you understand the overall macro skills of the IELTS program. We look into separately step by step and key highlights and examples. Also understand what are the tips and strategies that are aligned to all the macro skills of the IELTS program. And what skills do students need to practice? I think that's very important and key for us to address in this session, because we have a lot of things running in our mind. We are embedded to kind of allow with a lot of information over the internet process. But I think it's also important that we should not just be satisfied with what we learn, but we need to aim as to what is required and be efficient enough to progress while we are learning. And how to help band 4 and 5 students cope with test materials. Now, I have come across students over the last few years of IELTS training that students who come to appear for IELTS, especially at band 4 and 5, who have consistently taken this exam, have a lot of difficulty in reading and writing especially, and also few in listening and speaking. So they go hand in hand when they look at their overall average band. So I also would like to address some keynotes in terms of how can you overcome fear, what are the barriers that you might generally come across, the common mistakes that you might do, so that you would avoid them and not repeat them again. Next. All right, so here I'm also be referring to, yeah, the previous slide, please. Cambridge official guide. Okay, thank you. I'll also be referring to Cambridge official guide to IELTS, and this is a very famous book for all of us. It's a very comprehensive guide to the IELTS test, and it's into 2 separate parts. The first half is a skill section, which mainly outlines and explains different skills you need to master for IELTS test, and this is followed by Cambridge practice session. And I'm sure if you are going through Cambridge practice session, there's a lot more that you can learn, but of course you need a certified facilitator to kind of bring you hand in hand and teach you that how you're going to perform in the IELTS practice tests. Well, there are different practice tests that are available in the Cambridge guide, a practice test section with 8 to various sections that range between listening, reading, speaking, and writing. But we in Novus Education emphasize on the key practices and also look at it's not from a practice standpoint, but efficiently learn and see what are the weaknesses and strengths that you carry step by step in each band, so that you are not falling, but still you're moving ahead. Okay. Next. So let's start by asking this question: how do you see the IELTS test your overall? Let me ask this question again to audience. I think about 17 have joined. So it's also good for us to see and reflect on this question, that how do you see the IELTS test? So there's a S here, it's a small error there, but we'll ignore that for now in the presentation. How do you see the IELTS test? Anyone would like to comment? How do you see IELTS test? Is it easy, difficult? You can manage it? Or you have to prepare a lot? You have to attend program or class sessions for over 3 months? Then you will be able to perform? Anything that can come into your mind right now, that how do you see the IELTS test? Okay, so let's start by thinking on this question, that IELTS test is mainly about the attitude of the test, and it can only shape the way you prepare for it. In this picture, you can see that the student sees the test, and he also finds an obstacle blocking his path. And the problem we are seeing in this test that way is because the preparation generally involves looking for various ways around the obstacle. And also, sometimes the student would end up going for shortcuts, isn't it? For example, you might look for patterns or way to try and guess answers and try to learn writing task answers. And they might just go off your heart and hand, and then you will end up into a low score in the test. But it's also a wasting your valuable learning time if you're looking at patterns and shortcuts and trying to just guess the answers relating to the questions given to you. Another problem that I also noticed with IELTS students, and also which is why I was reflecting in this image, that the whole focus is only on the test itself and not on the language learning. What I mean here is that you are not focusing on the step-by-step, how should I improvise based on the practices that I've aimed and attained, and how should I move into the next step, and how do I correct so that I don't repeat the same. But if you look at it as an overall umbrella, just practicing the session, I really don't think we're going to meet the need of the overall IELTS. And there can be common errors that you might repeatedly do again and again. Okay, next one. All right. So some common strategies that people use to try to get a high score, they plan to do a lot of practice tests, which I already mentioned. And I know one student whose approach was to keep taking the test over and over again. And he was very quite disappointed when he kept getting the same score. And I'm sure you might relate to this as well. And also teachers who are new to the overall IELTS program might also decide to prepare their class by giving all the students some amount of audio files or reading files or writing files and speaking scripts, and would just allow them to go through the answers. Do you really think that's the right approach? Can we just reflect on that and see what best we can do through Novus education as we go along? Now, as you can see in the next slide, there are also unhelpful strategies, which I think is a no-no for me as a trainer, certified from British Council, that looking for patterns is not the right way, and looking for only tests is not the right way. I think also shortcuts also is not the right way, because you're just going around in circles and you will just start in the same place again and again. So no strategies to IELTS is not encouraging yourself, even during your self-study, that looking for patterns and looking for the answers relating to questions and just grabbing the information the way it is and trying to have some assumptions, predictions, and presumptions, and assuming that this would be the likely closest answer to the question is a no-no strategy to me as a trainer. So it's much better to see the tests like this in the next slide, in the picture coming up, that IELTS test is more or less like a signpost that tells you how far you can come in your learning. Taking this analogy is what I thought a little further, that you could see that IELTS as a sort of a GPS, if I may, in this test. And the students need to give off very clear signals to show where they are aiming in the IELTS score. And also students need to show how to give off those signals and help them to improve and develop their language skills. So they can make a genuine progress if they are aiming to practice step by step and achieve a better score in the test. So students, the students that I have at least worked with over the last few years have mentioned before that they keep taking the test and basically they are standing still in one spot. And asking whether I'm doing this over and over again is so very important, but still missing in their ability. So which is why here always we need to not look at a different approach of simplicity of appearing for an IELTS exam, but really looking an authentic way of how we can develop on the IELTS preparation. And there are more appropriate ways to do IELTS preparation, as we can see in the next slide. That one is that not just walking along a road, but swimming in a pool is very, very important. In fact, I was thinking a lot about this when I was doing this presentation, that swimming in a pool is one strategy that we should be using so that we can explore in all the four corners and swim as much as we can so that we are able to learn the skills that will help them stay afloat. Okay, so this analogy also helps to show that IELTS measures from band 1 to 9 students, as you know, at every level, and they have to cope with all the same elements. So in the next slide, we can see that no matter what experience you carry as a working professional, or if you may even be a linguistic certified English trainer, or you have enough vocabulary or grammar understanding, that doesn't aim that you are good in taking IELTS tests. And it doesn't speak about experience, it doesn't speak about capability or competence level, or the depth of understanding you have over English. There is an art and overarching measure in which you have to look at IELTS. So while the higher bands are more confident who appear in the IELTS exam, but it's also important to understand that all levels need to practice and develop the same core skills. Okay. So now, as I said earlier, that you should not only take tests or do practice tests, but practice test is important. It helps to increase familiarity, isn't it? When you do practice tests, you are getting oriented with the test paper. You are able to understand the different question types that are for that particular module. And you're also improving the timing that is aligned during your practice in every paper of the module. And both of these together will help you to build confidence. And these are the main reasons why I think you should practice more and take time so that you are able to confidently perform when you go for an IELTS exam. Some common questions that many students and also teachers have asked me in the next slide, that what if I don't understand a word in the question? And several teachers discussed in trainers workshop, which was conducted in Chennai, that they asked, why does IELTS have so many different types of questions? The answer is that the IELTS test is written with some key aims in mind, is what I believe. And one is that the first is to be fair, and that means that it is designed to make sure that the candidates who are in the lower bands also have an opportunity to show off what they know as the higher band candidates who come and appear for the exam. So the answer to the teacher's question here is also that IELTS aim to be a valid and accurate and reliable structure. We know that Cambridge University has invested a lot of time in designing the entire structure for the IELTS program. And so referring to, I think that valid test of a skill like reading, for example, or writing has a lot of emphasis and depth to really understand how the bands are defined and how students have to be aligned to the band structures and the scores to meet the performance in the overall exam. Yeah. So we look at an orientation now in terms that IELTS, I'm sure at least few students, if you're here already, who have gone through IELTS earlier, and if you're planning to attempt IELTS, and if you are still wondering what IELTS training program is all about, I'd like to just give you a simplified version of understanding IELTS training program. So we know that in IELTS that we have two versions of training. One is IELTS Academic and the other is IELTS General Training. Now, IELTS measures what does IELTS really mean? Okay, so it means the International English Language Testing System, which is very easy and clear for us to understand. And there are certain tasks and texts that would appear in different question types, depending on whether you're going for an academic IELTS or if you're going for an IELTS General Training. Now, these modules are spread across like a billboard, and they have a strict timeline and questions and expectations from the band score point of view. Now, if you look at the differences here between IELTS Academic and IELTS General, listening and speaking for IELTS, whether it's academic or general, is one and the same. But when it comes to reading and writing, is different. Of course, we can see that the timing is the same between reading and writing, whether it's both for general or academic. But however, the question test format changes during the question types and how they are measuring the reading and the writing pattern. So listening, I think, for many students is easy, because if they believe that they have the ability of listening, they will be able to grab the information quickly, and as soon as possible, they can aim for a good success IELTS score. But I think what is important, it is not so, because you are given a various accent audio files, whether it could be American, British, or someone from New Zealand or Australian, who would have these audio files run into as part of the Cambridge University, and you have to be very familiar with this sort of an accent. And again, is accent very important in IELTS? No, not at all. IELTS does not look for whether you have a voice and accent training certificate for you to appear into an IELTS program. So there are different question types in listening. There are about 40, which is same for general and academic. And in these question types, they would have about 4 sections. And in these 4 sections, we could see that in section 1 and 2, that there are different conversations that are going on between 2 people, and in section 2, a monologue or a single conversation. While in section 3 and 4, we can see that the conversation would be happening between up to 4 people, and the topics could vary between educational or training context. And in section 4 would be a monologue where the topic would be relating to academic subject, for example, a university lecture. Now, what are they exactly assessing in listening skills? So they are looking at a wide range of listening skills, understanding, the main ideas of what you're listening. You need to also capture the specific factual information, if I may say so, and also recognize while you're listening through the audio file, what are the opinions of the speaker, the attitude, the purpose of the speaker. And sometimes when you go within section 3 and 4, you would also see that it tend to get more difficult, because there's been a development in the conversation where it might lead to an argument or a disagreement to an agreement conversation. So that is where you would need a more of, I think, facilitation, which Novus Education has a lot of experts. We're not looking at audio files, just giving them away to you to practice, but we will first initially assess you at the beginning of the stage to understand that how you are able to even look at the conversation in the first place. We will run you through section 1 and section 2 for a certain period of time, and then slowly and gradually we will move into section 3 and 4. Why do we do that? And I think we are proud to talk about it, because unless you feel confident that section 1 and 2, you are able to get the comprehensive acknowledgement of the entire speaker, the subject, then you will be surely able to move into section 3 and 4, and we can give you certain tips and strategies as to how you can understand the correlation of the speakers when it's getting difficult as you proceed in section 3 and 4. Now, reading and in writing for academic and general, as I mentioned to you, certainly differs. So I might give you some examples as we go along, so I will cover similarly to what I just mentioned on the listening pattern. But most students think that speaking is way to go. It's easy, we can do it because we just have to talk about ourselves. Yes, I do agree that we are there to present and talk short about ourselves within the 3 to 4 minutes that's given to us in different parts, part 1, part 2, and part 3. But of course, when you go into part 2 and part 3, you have to again believe in yourself that how you're going to structure your presentation. The reason being that you never know what the topic would be on the cue card, and the examiner would want to really see your ability to present the fluency, the vocabulary, and the pronunciation, including your grammar, at the same time that you are able to put all the lexical resources together in the speaking skills. So we move on with a certain example to understand more briefly into developing reading. Now, as you can see in this passage, there are different question types in reading. And let me just emphasize and highlight on the key things about reading and how you can develop, and how is it Novus trying to help you in developing reading skills. So this is about a 60 minutes agenda, the entire reading module, and there will be 40 questions. And for sure, there will be a variety of question types for you to choose from based on the pattern given to you. So there will be multiple choice, identifying information, or writing, whether it's yes, not given, or question types, or true or false, not given question types. What is the differentiating factor? Let me highlight between listening and reading. Question type is that you would come across matching features, sentence matching, endings. You will also look at matching list of headings and matching the topics relating to the passages. And the other key thing that people or the students would suffer during the reading skills would be that they are not having enough confidence, especially not given part when they have the question type true, false, not given, yes, no, not given. Not given becomes too very challenging, because the reason being that have I really understood what it means not given? Is it the information already given, or should I look for a contrary information and assume that that could be the right answer? So through Novus, we are going to teach you certain key techniques and tips to understand that what reading module is all about. We will go through certain different processes to understand the ability for you to identify certain key messages in reading. So I also want to give you how we are going to structure this. So we're going to approach and look at skimming and scamming in the passage for a specific detail, and dealing with descriptive passages which reflect the reading section 1. And then we will also move into understanding and stay connected with each other to identify opinions, attitudes, and argumentative or discursive texts. We will also give you a lot of examples relating to reading. You will also look at how to develop those skills. Through skimming, you will also float into various opportunities to really understanding the context and the purpose of this passage. You will also have modes and techniques and audio files to really understand the importance of reading strategies and exactly looking at the passage and seeing what is the wrong approach, what is the right approach, and what is the key advice for the preparation. Just answering the question based on looking at the title. I saw Gopi in the initial chat mention that for reading, if I just read the title of or the heading question, I can just go back and skim and scam into the passage and get the right answer. I believe as a trainer that is a wrong approach, because I think first you have to skim the entire passage. You need to understand the main idea of the passage, and then you have to go and look at the question and then come back, because you have already scanned and looked at the meaningful keywords that appear in the reading passage. So skimming and scamming approach, what we are aiming at here is for you to kind of look at the keywords in the question. Like I mentioned here, that here are a few examples based on the question patterns that we have at Novus, that you look at what are the similarities from the passage given on the left-hand side. The keywords that I had identified is save time and money. So can we just think of what are the common synonyms or similarities or complementary words or meaningful words that can go hand in hand to the keywords in the question? So in this case, we see one example, similar words in the passage like reduce time and cost, so which means is equivalent to save time and money. Or let's look at another example here at the bottom left, authorization. So authorization, what words come into your mind when you look at authorization? It can be that permission or approval or ability to go ahead, and so approval is another good example when you're matching to skimming and scanning from vocabulary standpoint. So you need to understand vocabulary. Now I've come across many students that, ma'am, we can just get the keywords in the passage and then we can proceed further and catch the title that fits to the passage. I really think that's the wrong approach. You need to understand the meaningful words that are attached in the passage to the question that is given to you. Then you will be able to perform reading very well. And if you build that art of practice in doing different question types, you will be automatically be able to perform and break the code of finding it not very difficult in writing or in performing in the reading module. Also, let's look at another example in the same slide, staff without own desk. So if you look at staff without own desk, that seemed to be a very unusual statement, even as a keyword. But if I'm looking at a similar word in the passage, can I look at people who no longer have a desk, or someone who is not given or organized a desk itself or permitted to stay in one stop go. So I think we have to look at and improve in reading vocabulary, and we can give you a lot of lists pertaining to vocabulary and passages which can frame in and around keywords and similar words so that you would not find difficulty to get them. Again, it doesn't matter that you have to know all the vocabulary words pertaining while you're going into skimming and scanning. I think you just have to ignore that. You have to just build the confidence in looking at correlation within the passage and understanding what is the key topic and relatively working across the answer that you want to aim based on the question. Next. So here we can see a famous quotation from Albert Einstein, and here we have to understand that processing information, what do you think? If we can just process information through IELTS materials that are available, N number out there, can we make it to IELTS by getting 7.5 band and above? Do you really agree with this statement? But I believe that Albert Einstein is actually telling us and guiding us and helping us to reflect on this text that we might have everything learned, but if you can't explain it in a simplified manner, you don't understand that you have well known about it. So I think it's important that if you go structure by structure through a facilitator, you will surely be able to perform and as you progress. So band 4 and 5 was also something that I mentioned in the initial stage when it comes to reading. And I've observed that how do we tackle reading test materials with lower band students? Well, you need to remember that students at this level are going to need help for sure, right? And support to increase their confidence. So having said that, I wouldn't allow the use of dictionaries. Let me be very honest with you. And as per the IELTS Train the Trainer certificate, and that's the key thumb rule, that you should not rely on dictionary much unless you have a lot of time or a year plan that you want to improve on your English vocabulary. For sure you can do that. But if you have a short period of time and you have to take a test on a fast track mode, I think depending on dictionaries and going into library and checking for all the needed materials aligned to reading, writing, and speaking, I don't think would meet and serve the purpose. So the very important thing for people who are at band 4 and 5, I would not encourage them because they already have a fear in mind and they would believe that, you know, they will not be able to move ahead. So dictionary would again become a dependable tool for them. So I would always allow students and encourage them not to get into dependable tools, but really working on the practice tests where students at lower band, you know, tend to kind of stay in a very isolated manner. They're not able to speak what are the key issues and weaknesses they have, especially in the vocabulary. So it is important for us to teach in Novus education to use their reading skills to help them cope with the passage without understanding every word at the start. Like as I mentioned in listening, we will be focusing on section 1 and 2 before we move into section 3 and 4. Similarly, even in reading as well, we will be looking at the section 1 so that you know that you don't have to depend on every word by word, but we'll also teach you the art of skimming and scamming and recommend you as to how to go about and immerse yourself into the water. So this is like a water, you have to immerse yourself into it and deep dive into it without limiting yourself into the reading section. And students also, I think, you know, over the period of time can become confident in using reading skills because they also get a guide to look at what is the first step to really think about. One is questions and discuss them and go through tasks within the online class. So here in Novus education, we will help you to cope up in their tests within these 3 separate parts of reading and how to tackle those 40 questions. And my often advice to students is to aim for a target of 1 minute per question, not to work on the entire passage and then go back and look at the questions or vice versa, but also it's important to look at each question, pay at least 1.5 minutes, and then allow time for pre-reading and scanning so that you are able to identify what is the crux of the entire reading process. Next slide. So there are different practices and question types in reading. As you can see here, there is flowchart. Can anyone tell me if you have gone through IELTS? Did you have any difficulty in flowchart? Have you faced any such situation before? Is there anyone online who had gone through IELTS test, or even looking at the flowchart? Do you think it's easy for someone to attempt flowchart in IELTS reading? Yes, it's difficult. Absolutely. Gopi is on with me. Okay. So, you know, by now that students should be ready to look at the first task, and here it's a flowchart completion. So I would ask students to spend some time discussing the task in the classroom, or it's an online session, so that it's less daunting and we can talk earlier about the test fairness and how it fits. Because if you look at flowcharts, basically the questions are always in the same order as is in the text for the following types of questions. So multiple choice, or whether it is short answer questions or sentence completion, where you have to write in a missing word or words from the passage and identifying information which is also given to you as true, false, not given, or yes, not given, and so on. So these question types are all direct, and they send a specific message to the student already. They need to just, we need to ask them to read it out based on the details given to them, and they can always come back and see what is the text order. So the questions are never in the text order for any other matching questions as we go along in section 3 and 4, because sometimes they keep changing. The logical order might change in the text, and the last question type of questions, the information is sometimes it could be in the same order as tagged with the other one, or it may not be in the similar order. So in reading, there's also certain amount of complexity that is involved, where sometimes it can be straightforward question, or sometimes it can be going around, and you need to understand what is the key subject and accordingly answer it. Okay. So what is your view about listening test? Can anyone, I think Gopi is very active here. Maybe I would encourage others also to kind of pitch in and tell me, what do you think about listening module? Do you think it's easy to go? Is it difficult? It's all about listening. I just need to hear clearly what the speaker is saying and accordingly answer the question. Is that simple? Do you really think that's what listening test is all about? Concentration is the key. Okay, Ashish is saying concentration. Well, Ashish, I would like to disagree on that a little bit. I think it's not concentration, but I think the presence of mind is very important. And I'm saying this with confidence. I had a student who got 8.5, and she is a doctor, and she appeared in listening, and she got 8.5. And we had an argument where she came back and said, "Ma'am, I think it's not concentration, it's the presence of mind that is required." And I asked her, "Why do you think it's presence of mind? It's already, I mean, you have to just concentrate on the audio file and pay attention to the speaker and understand what is the subject, understand the instructions very well, and you can answer. That's easy." So she said, "No, ma'am, it's not about concentration. I think it's presence of mind, because in listening, you would have different accents going on at the same time, depending for that particular day test." So she talked to me that actively listening is the ability to kind of develop the presence of mind. And it's a good idea, I think, for me also as a trainer to learn that, because in section 1 and 2, I think we can all aim to get 9 out of 10, if I have to just put it on a scale, because each section has 10 questions, so they are overall 40 questions. So overall, if I'm looking at section 1 and 2 into 2 different parts, I think I can easily attempt section 1 and 2, because there are direct answers going on simultaneously based on the speaker conversation. But when I end up into 3 and 4, where there are multiple choices, and I'm also given, a map labeling or plan labeling or a diagram labeling, like in this case that you see in the slide. That's where my challenge gets even more difficult. I need to understand the inferences relating to the topic. I should be even understanding compass guidelines very well. How do I see the end-to-end in a map or labeling diagram? How do I even get to understand what is the core information that is going on? So that's again coming back to the main idea of the overall picture. Like in this case, I can see there's before and after, and there are many trees. Probably this is an island, and there are different portions within the island. But in the other picture, a lot of information going on towards the north, south, east, and west. So I need to first get familiar to the overall outlook of a map or diagram or a label question type, so that I'm able to really get the crux and to the core as to what the speaker is saying. Now, again, the other challenge I also looked at in the flowchart question type in listening was that the speaker is not going directly to the vocabulary that he's using in the conversation. He's probably using some complementary words or meaningful words attached to the speaker's conversation. So I have to be very, very careful whether I'm able to understand the subject and then look at the flowchart, what should be in alignment to the answers to the particular listening scope. So there can be a lot of tips that most teachers do give for the listening, and I have also come across writing it down, and there are many. In fact, when I wrote last year, but I ended up coming to just now about 7 to 8, that when using a recording listening audio file, I think it's important sometimes for us to just listen over and over again before we go and jump into the answers. That is very important, so that you will be, as a student, getting exposed to a variety of listening texts on a range of different topics, and that sometimes can also get interest on you. And you can also develop a skill for your own life, because you're engaging into a content which is very natural. It is a social context that we are talking about, like, accommodation agency, booking a ticket, or reservation conversation or organizing a workshop. These are very familiar topics that run in our day-to-day conversation. So you're already building a positive frame of mind. And I also believe that pausing the tape and replaying sometimes would also help you to check, whether you're not able to listen to the conversation, or you're missing on the vocabulary, or you're missing in understanding numbers, dates, time, letters. Letters do matter in IELTS. Any letter that you miss, it means is a miss. So you have to also focus on different range of accent, even to understand. Like there was one student who heard a car number as actual answer was AC 9493, and he heard it as IC 9493. So he was not able to relate whether it was the tone difficulty in the accent process, whether it is I or A. So I think pausing and going and repeatedly listening to the audio file also sometimes can help you improve. Now, what is it that we are going to do differently in listening? I also already mentioned that we will only walk you through part by part, section by section, unless you move confidently into the next page. Okay, can we move ahead? All right. I think here is, I'm going to only give a gist since we have a less of time. We're looking at writing and also in the next slide, speaking. So speaking, I think it'll be easy for me to simplify as we go along, but writing, I think most students face a lot of difficulty in writing, because task 1 in academic and writing is very different in task in general writing is very different in task 1. So I think it's important because you're given a limitation on words. Can someone tell me that in task 1 word limit, if you had appeared to IELTS writing test already, can you tell me, is the word limit 150 a must? Can I go over and above it, or should I just make sure it's 149 in task 1? Anyone? Maybe a guess. Yes, you can go over. Very good. Okay, I agree. Absolutely. So there has been a myth that students just count words to word to really understand whether this is one passage, two passage, three passage that is fitting in an essay. I think that's just breaking your confidence already. I think what is important is the ability to write and understand the complexity of the vocabulary that is involved in writing. You can definitely go up to 170 is what I tell my students. And also for 270 in task 2, okay? You may challenge me for that, please go ahead, but that is the way it is. You can go and write 170 words in task 1 and task 2, you know, you can go for 270, it doesn't matter. But of course, there are a lot of you know, blogs written from Cambridge University that over and above 270 or close to 300 is even still okay. So we can still stand there, but anything over that would not be you know, accepted. And again, you have to look at the format of the answer sheet itself. You know that the answer sheet that's already given to you, it's not like the school exam that you're given list of papers to come to write as much as possible. I think you have to again follow the structure of your answer sheet and make sure that you're able to write at least between 170 for task 1 and 270 for task 2. And why I would say that is because the more you write beyond 150, your score also will increase. Yes, let me promise that to you. Your score also will increase because you're able to describe, you're able to look at what is the event, you have to explain the data, or you have to look at the stages of different process. So you might have some sequential words that are coming up in your mind correspondingly. I think it's also important to encourage and see even how you're going to look at letter writing for that matter, whether it is semi-formal or neutral style or formal letters. And we in Novus Education provide you list of patterns of letters that go for formal, semi-formal, and neutral. So there is no confusion. The moment you see a letter writing, there are 6 correspondent steps that we will give to you, and you can just I like to use the word memorize, especially in writing when it comes to letter writing, because the reason being that, you know, if it is a formal letter, these are the 4 things that I should be using, and of course in 5 and 6 I have to play around with the way I'm going to structure my vocabulary and the lexical resources aligned to it as well. But when it comes to you know, the overall whether it is semi formal writing or neutral writing, the formula still remains the same. So we'll also give you a 3 model dimension for essay writing, that in essay writing, no matter what the question type is, whether it is advantages, disadvantages, or agreement or non-agreement, or give your opinion or argument, or double questions, different types that go in essay writing, we will also give you a 3 model dimension. So you can just put that as a formula for all the question types in writing skills. And I can you know, confidently say that if you're able to follow that, you will surely get easily 7.5 and above. So lastly, we look at speaking, and then we have about just about maybe extend it for another 5 minutes to take up your key questions. So looking at speaking, I think again going back to the same what I begin with, that speaking is, as we think, is very easy. But however, we in Novus Education will prepare you with the topic. We'll give you different scope of topics, not just relating to politics or economics or science or technology or you know, the burning issues that are going on globally, but we will also assess your ability to communicate, how you're giving your opinions, your information, and also do you understand even day-to-day related common topics. Sometimes the examiner might ask you very simple questions. They are not very complicated. In fact, if you actually go through speaking modules with us, you will realize it's a spectacular way to analyze your own speaking ability, and you can also feel how you can organize coherently the ability to express. So grammatically, we will also help you in fluency. We will also help you to pronounce your words correctly. We will also do recording sessions so you can hear your own recording, you can replay it, you can understand what is missing, what is not missing. We will also give you feedback based on the recorded file, that these are the areas that you have to improve. So we'll also provide the related script so that you can go back and record and come back and play you know, based on the topic given to you as an assignment. Okay, so I'd like to see if you have any questions out there, and if there are any key questions I would like to answer. So looks like nobody have any questions. Harita, are you there?